This video is sponsored by Dragori Games and their new Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition supplement, Tanares RPG. It's important before I get into the topic of the video that you understand the context of where I'm coming from. See, I had the idea to make a video about pre-written supplements and adventures and how to adjust them in order to cater towards your players at your table. And the reason for that is I actually hardly ever use pre-written supplements in any form or fashion. The reason for that is my DM work is about 50% prep, 50% improv. I have everything I want to happen or I know will happen in the session in my head, and I write down very basic notes. And for the most part, I just riff off of what my players do because I feel that makes a more dynamic game. I've never enjoyed being bound by what's going to happen in the book, and I'm not very good at just adjusting what's in front of me if it's already written down. I prefer to just have basic notes and to roll with it from there. That's not the best way to DM, it's just the way that I DM. I don't think there is a best way, but it's the one I genuinely prefer, and because of that, I really avoid pre-written supplements. And so when I was reached out to by Dragori Games in order to be able to make a video about their pre-written supplement, I thought it would be a perfect time to take that as an example and talk about how to make sure that it caters to your players. I'm going to be 100% honest, and this is not because I'm sponsored. They didn't give me a script, it's just me allowing to be myself. I honestly think that this supplement could be the golden standard of how to make sure a pre-written supplement caters to your players. They've done such an amazing job in the pre-written adventure they sent to me as a sample of catering to players that if this is actually how the whole product is going to look, I 100% have buy-in. I think it's amazing, and there is so much hard work and dedication and passion clearly poured into it, and I'm going to be gushing about it just a little bit. But please understand that when they reached out to me and asked me for this, there was a high chance that we didn't strike a deal and there was no sponsorship on this video, but I was still seriously considering getting to this at a later point once the actual supplement was released off of Kickstarter. So I only say all that to let you guys know that I'm going to be using Tanares today as an example of how to make things cater towards your players, but I think Tanares already does a great example of that, and so we'll be learning from the supplement they've sent me. Fun drinking game. Take a shot of water every time I say supplement this video. Anyways, with that being said, I want to talk about how to take pre-written adventures and make them feel specially tailored towards your players. So let's talk about that. Like I said at the start of the video, I personally don't actually like using pre-written supplements, but reading through this adventure has been a lot of fun. So for those who don't know, Tanares RPG is a D&D supplement that's going to be going out on Kickstarter on the 31st of this month. It's essentially a massive campaign setting with its own adventures, homebrewed classes, and subclasses alongside races, and I think it's amazing. The adventure that they sent me, however, is just a basic level 1 adventure that you can start your campaign out in, and I think it's a lot of fun. But when talking about wanting to make a pre-written supplement cater to your players, the reason this is important is because a pre-written supplement has its details laid out. As we all know, in Dungeons & Dragons, your players can go off the rails at any time. Any decision they make may not jive with what's written in front of you, and unless the book is written very, very well, a lot of the times it won't account for that, and you may just have to toss out the book at a certain point. Not only that, it has pre-written plot points, and a lot of the times players don't care about plot hooks unless it relates to their character or the character's backstory. So you have to be very certain that when you're going to use a pre-written adventure, you know how to cater this to your players, which is why I'm making this video. So that being said, I think this sample adventure that they sent to me is a perfect example of how to do this. The first thing it does is make sure that in session 0, you have a common point for all of your players to make your characters around, so there's no chance of them accidentally going off the rails. See, when you make your character directed in a certain direction because of something you have in your head, it makes it a lot easier. Because there's already player buy-in. Everybody has made their characters for a specific point. They know that this is an adventure they want to do because they made their characters around it. If you don't do this, you run the chance of somebody making a character who really wants to go treasure hunting and somebody who really wants to avenge their parents, and none of that is in the book. But that does lead to another example of what you can do, which is if the player has something important in the backstory, find a way to write it into the book. If they have an important NPC, find an NPC in the book who could be replaced with that. Or even better, if your player comes to you and says, I want to have somebody important in my life, find an NPC that already exists in there and write in that they have an important tie to this character. But the point I'm trying to make is that the players must have something important to them in the supplement, whether you write it in or you take something that's in the supplement and make it something the players care about. But without that, it's going to be very difficult for you to have any player buy-in, which I find is the most difficult thing, especially when using a pre-written supplement. Now, at the beginning of this adventure, in a section called The Trial, we have one of the things I think might be my favorite thing I've ever seen. And now understand, I've made it clear I don't have a lot of experience with these pre-written things, so it's possible this is commonplace. But for me, this is the first time I've seen it, and I love it. So, read directly from the PDF that was sent to me. The beginning of the adventure assumes that the players have already created their characters, registered their names in the trial records, which is part of the adventure, and paid for a stagecoach to take them to Skybell City's cathedral. And that's where the first trial is going to take place. Here's the part I love. You can have your Session 0 happen during the stagecoach ride, facilitated through a friendly and chatty coachman, an older human by the name of Throdge Holes. He is worried that the PCs are late for the beginning of the trials. I have never thought to have the Session 0 in character. And now, Session 0 in character could just be thought of as like, oh, well, Session 0, we've all sat down, we're all going to play our characters and figure them out, which is fine. But for me, a Session 0 is where you make your character right then and there. You talk about your backstories, you roll up the characters, you figure things out. However, the idea of figuring out your backstory and your character in real time as this NPC speaks to you has such a Skyrim or Elder Scrolls feeling that I think could be so much fun. Not only are you in character and learning about the world, you can have simple things of the NPC turning to you and saying, "What's your name?" And you sit there and you figure out, what is my name? What's my backstory? And have this NPC to bounce things off of, knowing nothing's concrete, it's just a Session 0, but you can do it in-game. And I think that is so fun and fascinating. And again, straight from the actual PDF, it gives the players a chance to introduce their characters and get in character. They get to share some of their backstories, they discuss some of the reasons they might be together, their relationships with one another, and what they want to accomplish. You get to create these bonds right there, and because you are doing this, you don't have to worry about the buy-in they're going to have in the adventure, because the adventure is what they're making their characters around. Now, I should mention that this supplement assumes you don't have a full Session 0, which I think is amazing. It's such a good concept and written so well. But personally, I really like this, regardless if you've had a full Session 0 or not. Back on the topic of tailoring things to your player characters, however, one of the things it does is it gives generic responses to certain rumors that they may be asked, which I think is, again, very cool. For example, it states if the NPC is to be asked about the Empire, they'll respond, "They're oppressive and take too much from us honest workers. Can never really know what to expect from the world's largest beast, but I guess you're safer inside the system. You know the saying, if you can't beat them." This is another great way of being able to tailor things to your players, as all you have to do is write something in that you know they may ask about. Oh, I'm pretty sure they're going to ask about this specific race of people because that's in their backstory. I'll already have a pre-written response. That makes things so much easier, especially for DMs who are not used to improvising. So far we've made sure that they tailor their characters to the adventure in front of them so that there's no worry about them going off in different directions too much, and we've also talked about how to make sure that when they create their characters, they do so within the world that they're in, and we give them a chance to be able to explore that. Now we get to one of the most crucial parts of a Session 1, which is the first combat. I don't think it's addressed much, but the first combat is incredibly important in characterizing your characters as it gives the vibe of what they are in combat. And it's important to know that, because it's important to know what a character is like in all three of the pillars of D&D: combat, exploration, and social encounters. It is just as important to know how they act in combat as it is to know what they will do in front of a king. So being able to get the vibe of what they want their character to do is so important, and it's the best time to do it right here, first combat that ever shows up. For example, say you have a fighter that took the unarmed fighting stance, and they are immediately going through and slugging with the enemies that have shown up. Alright, you know that they probably want to be an in-your-face, gritty fighter. As opposed to maybe in the first combat, one of them draws a scimitar and dances around the enemies. Okay, they want to be fast and nimble. This is a great time to get to know your characters on this level as well. But not only that, this adventure does something amazing. I'll read directly what happens from the book so that you can feel this. Flaming arrows whiz out through the dry air, coming from the road ahead. One of them hits your wagon. Throlge, your guide, slaps the fire out. "Stay put, I'll see what's going on." He walks to the wagon ahead and speaks to the coachman. As he glances back to check on you, his expression suddenly changes from mild worry to wide-eyed despair. Suddenly, you feel a flash of heat. Boom! A blinding explosion. A fireball destroys the wagon ahead, killing Throlge, the coachman, and the horses, and blocking the road. As the flames engulf the wagon structure and contents, you hear hurried movement approaching from the sides of the road. Keep in mind, Throlge has been your party's ability to connect to the world so far, and not only that, they've been asking questions of the PCs. Let me just toss a tip out there to all the aspiring dungeon masters. If you want your party to care about an NPC, have that NPC take an interest in the party and ask them questions. That simple tip, 90% of the time, will get your party to be incredibly invested. And we've just seen this character, which the party has grown attached to in the small amount of time we've had Session 0, at least a little bit, get murdered without warning. After this, a bugbear, some goblins, and a goblin witch exit out of the forest. There's clearly now an enemy that they have which they know killed a character they most likely cared about. Suddenly it's personal. They're not going to be wearing off the track, they're going to be invested in this book that you have written in front of you, because it will have to do with what just happened to that NPC. This is a great way of getting your players to care and tailoring it towards them. Make this NPC somebody they know that they will care about, and then they get offed. Now keep in mind that doing this regularly is cheap and not fair to the players. Don't just make them think anytime they get attached to an NPC, they're going to lose them. You know what happens if you do that? You convince them that it is a bad idea to care about them. But this opening is so strong to me, and I think it does a great job of understanding that whoever's running this supplement will probably want the players to be tailored into the world and care about this, and they've found a way to do that. Excellent work. So really, what does this all boil down to? Really, the most important part of the pre-written adventure in front of you and getting it to be tailored towards your players is the beginning. Make sure they're invested in it. Make sure you've talked with them beforehand about their characters and written that into the book, or have taken parts of the book and tailored it towards your characters ahead of time. And that makes things so much easier moving forward. Things will naturally evolve, but they will still probably be following along the book because that's what they're invested in now. How you tailor things towards your players is making sure that they care about the world that's already in front of them. And that works whether you have a pre-written adventure or not. Really, the best way to do it is to make sure it acts like a dance between the pre-written adventure and your player characters' backstories. And if you can do that, it should work so well and really create an engaging story for all of them. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I honestly think Tanares does a great job of doing this naturally, without the DM needing to know all this. But that also means this is a great way of learning how to do that and learning from this. I honestly am blown away just by the small amount I've seen of Tanares so far, and I really would encourage anybody who can to go and support this Kickstarter on the 31st when it first launches. It'll be offering really cool new features and mechanics, such as new classes, new subclasses, a team creation system, and even really well thought out PvP rules. Oh, and don't forget aerial combat. Ever wanted to do aerial combat? They have that. I genuinely am very impressed by them, and I'm very proud to have them be able to sponsor my video. I've had a lot of people already reach out to me for sponsorships, and I've turned a lot of them down just because I didn't think it made any sense or it wasn't a good product. This is not the case for this one, and they were a genuine joy to be able to work with. I mean, as of now, they've already sent it to quite a few people in order to be able to get their opinions on it, and people like Ed Greenwood, who's the creator of the Forgotten Realms, and Bruce Nesmith, who's the lead designer of Skyrim and a D&D creator, both gave it their thumbs up. So I'm genuinely excited for this product, and I will be there to kickstart it once it starts. If you have interest in doing that, the link is down in the description. So anyways, enough of me gushing about them. I just really genuinely support their product and think it's going to be great, and I was really happy to be able to work with them and was honored that they wanted to work with me. So anyways, go out into the world to make it your own, you beautiful bastards. Don't forget to have a great day, and never forget to play a role. Thank ya. Come again.